Right now, a war is being fought across the global economy. There are no explosions, no fighter jets, no missiles crossing the sky, yet the consequences could reshape the balance of power on Earth. The weapon driving this war is not military force, it's money. Behind closed doors, the world's most powerful economies are quietly battling over control of the global financial system. For nearly 80 years, one currency has dominated the entire planet, the US dollar. It powers international trade. It prices the world's oil. It anchors the global banking system. But today, something unusual is happening. More countries are starting to question that system. Some are building alternatives. Others are forming new alliances. And slowly, almost invisibly, the foundations of the global financial order are beginning to shift. Economists call it de-dollarization. But in reality, it's something much bigger. It's a silent currency war that could reshape the global economy for decades to come. To understand this silent battle, we have to go back to the end of the Second World War. In 1944, leaders from dozens of countries gathered in a small town in New Hampshire to design a new global financial system. That meeting became known as the Bretton Woods Agreement. The goal was simple: create a stable economic framework that would prevent another global depression. Under this system, the US dollar became the anchor of international finance. Other currencies were tied to the dollar, and the dollar itself was tied to gold. This arrangement gave the United States enormous influence over global trade and financial markets. Even after the gold standard ended in the 1970s, the dollar remained dominant. Why? Because the United States had the world's largest economy. Its financial markets were deep and stable, and most importantly, global commodities were priced in dollars. This meant countries everywhere needed dollars to conduct international business. Over time, the dollar became something more than just a currency. It became the backbone of the global economy. One of the most important pillars supporting the dollar is the global oil trade. Energy is the lifeblood of modern civilization. Every airplane flight, every shipping route, every factory, every power plant, all depend on oil and gas. For decades, most global oil transactions have been priced in dollars. Major oil producers like Saudi Arabia sell crude oil in dollars, creating what economists call the petrodollar system. This system forces countries around the world to hold large reserves of dollars just to purchase energy. If Japan wants oil, it needs dollars. If India wants oil, it needs dollars. If Germany wants oil, it also needs dollars. This constant global demand keeps the dollar powerful. But recently, something unexpected has begun to happen. Some countries are experimenting with trading energy using other currencies. In the last 2 decades, the global economic landscape has changed dramatically. Emerging economies have grown rapidly. Among them, one country stands out above all others: China. China is now the world's largest manufacturing hub and one of the biggest trading nations on Earth. As its economic power expanded, Beijing began exploring ways to reduce its reliance on the dollar. Instead of using dollar-based systems for trade settlements, China started encouraging partners to use its own currency, the yuan. This strategy is part of a broader effort to internationalize the Chinese currency. At the same time, another major player began accelerating similar efforts: Russia. After facing Western sanctions, Russia dramatically increased trade with Asian partners using alternative currencies. These developments have created new cracks in the dollar-dominated system. The United States has long used its control over global financial infrastructure as a geopolitical tool. Because the dollar dominates international banking networks, Washington can impose powerful sanctions on rival nations. These sanctions can freeze assets, block international transactions, and isolate countries from global markets. For governments targeted by these measures, the consequences can be devastating. This financial leverage has been used against countries such as Iran and Russia, but it has also had an unintended effect. Some nations now see dependence on the dollar as a strategic vulnerability. If access to the dollar system can be cut off, then building alternatives becomes a matter of national security. One of the most visible challenges to the existing financial order is emerging from a group of major developing economies. Known as BRICS, this bloc includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Together, These countries represent a massive share of the world's population and economic output. In recent years, BRICS leaders have discussed expanding trade settlements using their own currencies. Some policymakers have even proposed creating a shared financial infrastructure to reduce reliance on Western institutions. While these ideas remain in early stages, they highlight a broader trend. The world economy is becoming more multipolar. Instead of one dominant financial center, several major economic blocs may eventually compete for influence. The next frontier in the currency war may not involve traditional paper money at all. It could involve digital currencies. Central banks around the world are exploring the possibility of issuing digital versions of their national currencies. These systems are known as central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. China has already conducted large-scale pilot programs for its digital yuan. If successful, digital currency systems could allow governments to bypass traditional international payment networks. This could fundamentally change how cross-border transactions work and potentially reduce the dominance of existing financial infrastructure. Despite all the headlines, however, replacing the dollar is extremely difficult. The U.S. financial system remains the most liquid and trusted in the world. American government bonds are considered one of the safest investments available, and global investors still flock to dollar assets during times of crisis. In fact, when global markets panic, demand for dollars often increases. This phenomenon is sometimes called the dollar paradox. Even countries that criticize the dollar system still rely on it during financial turbulence. This means the dollar's dominance is unlikely to disappear overnight, but slow change is already happening. Currency power is not just an abstract economic concept. It affects real life. If the balance of financial influence shifts, it could reshape the entire global economy. Energy markets could become more volatile. Trade flows could change. Inflation could rise or fall depending on currency stability. And countries might form new alliances based on economic interests rather than traditional geopolitics. In other words, the outcome of this silent currency war could determine how wealth and power are distributed across the world. For nearly a century, the global financial system has revolved around one dominant currency. The US dollar became the center of international trade, finance, and investment. But today, the world economy is evolving. New powers are rising, new technologies are transforming finance, and new alliances are challenging old assumptions. The silent currency war is not fought with tanks or missiles. It's fought with trade agreements, payment systems, and financial strategy. And while the dollar remains powerful today, the future of global money may look very different. Because the battle for the world's financial system has already begun, and the outcome could shape the global economy for generations.